Start with what led to the release of Jair Alexander. I know it was because of the contract, but any idea why both sides could not come to terms on some sort of extension?
So the way it drug out, it signals that the Packers were prepared to move on for a while and just couldn't find the cleanest way to do it. I do know that when they were restructuring his trade or offering him a revised contract, it was with the intention of trading him on that contract. That's my understanding. I think Jair knew that. So really they were offering him a deal on a new 1 year that really, it wasn't terrible money-wise from what I heard, but it was a lot of, per-game roster bonuses and incentives. Like the structure of it wasn't solidified, that a player of that caliber would want. So he kind of called their bluff and wouldn't take it. And so they figured, well, he's kind of untradeable at this point because nobody would trade for that original dollar amount of the $17.5 million he was owed. So they just decided to move on at that point. It's kind of unfortunate that it took this long, but sometimes players hold out for, potential trade or to make sure they're comfortable with the players they have at that position in order to make a move from that guy. But with the durability concerns and some other things, there were some whispers of some locker room stuff there with him a little bit. I don't know how true all that is, but there was enough there where the Packers were ready to move on.
So if he is traded, is he going to be a guy that demands a new contract wherever he's traded to, or would he be willing to come to a contender and play on the same existing deal he's got now?
Well, since he was released, he's
right.
He's
he can do whatever he's saying.
So
right. He's totally free. There's nothing to do with that. He can do his own deal.
Yeah, so he's a free agent. He can do whatever he wants at this point. And really, I do expect it to be a 1 year deal. I think it'll be a similar situation that he would have faced in Green Bay had they kept him.
So he'll not settle for. He's not going to settle for. If it's a 1 year deal, he's doing it on a prove it thing to try to say, here's my real worth for next offseason.
I do believe that's part of the strategy because he's only 28 years old, I believe. And I mean, look, this is a guy who's been a top 3 cornerback at times in the last 3 to 4 years. So I doubt he's going to take some small amount. It would have to be reasonable money. But, he was due 17. I think he knew he wasn't going to make 17 this year. So something below that, but definitely not under 10, I think would be my guess.
So, Jeremy, any idea on teams that are interested in a guy like Jair Alexander? A lot of teams need corners, but I imagine because he gets the pick, being that he is a free agent, does he want to go to the contending teams? And are the Eagles one of them?
Well, I do believe intention with a team performance is part of it. I don't think he's going to a team that's really not going to be in contention. So I do think that's a factor. Talking to people that have been around him or close to him, that they believe loyalty is important to him, connection's important to him. That's why I do have the Eagles on my radar. With defensive backs coach Christian Parker was with him in Green Bay. They had successful years together. His former DB's coach is in Washington, Jason Simmons. I don't know how heavy Washington would get into it at this point. And then Atlanta with Jerry Gray, who was with him with the Packers. And, Atlanta needs a corner. So those are 3 I do look at as just from a connection standpoint, and I think those teams would at least look into it. Tampa's another team. I expect to look into it. Minnesota's another team as well.
Can you look at with this offseason for the Eagles right now, we've been talking a lot about the revamping of the defense with the veterans that left. Do you think Howie is sort of content at the moment, or do you believe he's got his eyes on a lot of the shopping list?
I think it's both. I do sense that they're pretty happy with the cornerback room, and they like how the 2 guys you mentioned earlier, Ringo and Jackson, have done so far. And they got the draft picks that they brought in, that they picked in a high slot. So I think they're pretty comfortable right now. This is not a situation where they have to press for Jair Alexander. It would be more just about fit, and is it something that could put us over the top on that end? So that's why Jair, I believe, is at least in a conversation. And then, there's other corners too, like Asante Samuel Jr., who was coming back from a neck injury, but he was one of the top free agent corners. He probably won't sign until late July, I would say, but I do know the Eagles have thought about that one, and that's on their radar as well. Sort of those shifty corners that, sudden guys that can play inside and out, might not have long speed, but can make things happen in that short to intermediate range.
The longer these things go, how quickly does the price value start to drop? Like, I also think about a player like a Justin Simmons who has ties with Vic Fangio back in Denver, and he's still available, but I know he's available because maybe the price tag's too high. So the longer this goes, how much could it drop?
Well, that's the dance, right? Like, I think if you're a free agent and you have an agent that's worth his salt, they'll say you can take a bad deal anytime. You can take a bad deal in May or June. So, like, do you wait till training camp? Like, a guy like Justin Simmons, I can see him waiting because people know what he can do. And, you get to training camp. Sometimes teams get to camp and are even more uncomfortable with what they have at that position that they're trying to sign you on. Maybe a week into camp, it's like, oh, these guys aren't looking very good. So, or there could be an injury, a big injury at a place. Simmons is interesting because I think coming out of Atlanta, I do think he's looking for that Vic scheme. That's why the Eagles are on the short list there, because it's Philadelphia. It's, Carolina has interest in Simmons, and EJ Revere came from the Big Fangio school. So that's where I think you should look with Simmons, and that's going to be important for Jair too. I mean, especially these DBs, you're not going to go somewhere where you're unfamiliar, don't fit the scheme, and don't know the coaches most of the time.
Jeremy, we appreciate the time as always, man.
Thank you so much for being a part of our journey on a daily basis, watching here on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. We always appreciate you doing that because it makes our jobs a lot better when the bosses are happy. So thank you very much, and keep on watching.